Oh, ich kann kein Deutsch sprechen.
What? You speak German too, Sergio?
No, I just said I don't.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the Hurdy Gurdy Cafe, an hour of interviews, music, and camaraderie. I'm Ryan, and I'll be your host along this crazy adventure through the land of the wheel fiddle. So strap in, and let's see what's cranking in the Hurdy Gurdy community today.
So maybe we can start the podcast, or what? Yeah?
Yes, let's go ahead and let's do that.
Okay.
So welcome to episode 5 of the Hurdy Gurdy Cafe, the Hurdy Gurdy podcast, and I'm here with Sergio Gonzalez.
Hello, everybody.
And Sam Riffle.
Hi.
And Sergio, how would you introduce Sam?
Sam, we all know Sam, and if you don't know her, you should know her, by the way. Is my fellow admin from the Hurdy Gurdy community group on Facebook. She's the queen of the Hurdy Gurdy community. Hello, Sam. How are you?
Hello. I'm really I feel like I have such imposter syndrome about this because I'm really I'm just the person who does the filing. I'm not the superstar or anything. People know my name because I'm the one who adds new members to the group. So I do the paperwork. I'm the front desk.
Yes.
Well, if it wasn't for you, a lot of the stuff wouldn't be happening. So.
Oh, right. Not to say that it's not an important job. I recognize that, but I'm not. I'm not the superstar player or a lot of the other people that you guys are going to be talking to in the future. I'm not. I'm just a passionate hurdy-gurdy enthusiast and a very organized person. So that's why this is.
That's why you moved to Germany, right?
Yeah, actually, that's a big part of it. Very efficient.
Okay, Sam. So maybe you can start talking about how did you start with the instrument?
Right. So, like you guys said, as you can probably hear from how I sound, I'm American, but I moved to Germany in 2005, and I was doing a master's program here, and a lot of the friends I made on the program had the same sort of nerdy interests that I had. So it was role playing and gaming and all that sort of stuff, fantasy and dragons and swords and. So, of course, with that comes a certain style of music, and there's a whole scene here in Germany that I knew nothing about when I lived in the US. It's called Mittelalterrock, or medieval rock. So it's bands like Subway to Sally, In Extremo, Schandmaul, and so they introduced me to all of these bands, and I just immediately fell in love with that kind of music because it combined everything I love about all that nerdy fantasy stuff and some of it was really historical, they'd taken music from medieval scores that they'd researched in archives and stuff, and of course there's a lot of Irish folk in there as well, because this is an interesting thing with Germany because the folk music that you have here, a lot of it is Irish or Scandinavian because there's sort of a stigma about historical German stuff, for good reason. So they take a lot of their inspiration in the folk scene here from other countries. So anyway, so we would start going to a lot of these shows, and I was listening to these albums all the time. And to be honest, with those bands, I didn't really notice the hurdy-gurdy. It was there in all of them, I think, but there were so many other instruments combined in there that I didn't really, or that they were mixed in such a way that it's like one even sound, and it doesn't really stand out next to the other instruments. So it took a couple of years of listening to this kind of music, and for me, it was like a downward spiral. I started with, this fantasy, fun, dancing folk music, and I just went deeper and deeper into metal, really. Now I'm into really extreme stuff that's just screaming and noise. But
it's not noise. Come on.
somewhere around 2010, I was listening to a band called Arkona. Who are a Russian folk metal band where they had this blend of clean singing and screaming, where it took me a while to get used to harsh vocals in music. So that was one that was like a gateway where I heard this and I thought, oh, it's so beautiful, the clean singing. And then she's like, oh, it's a female singer. And
she's awesome. Masha, right?
Masha, yeah. So in 2010, there used to be a regular tour here in Europe called Pagan Fest. They did a Pagan Fest in the spring and a Heiden Fest, or Heathen Fest, in the fall. And so the 2010 trailer video for Pagan Fest, I was thinking of going because Arkona was playing, and I saw the trailer and there was this music in the background and I was like, what is that sound? That is the most beautiful thing I have ever heard. And it was Eluveitie's Thousandfold. And it was
okay. Good tune. Yeah.
The hurdy-gurdy solo right at the beginning of that track. Na, 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 na. I went, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. Now, I missed the tour that year because I got the swine flu. So, but as soon as I heard that sound, I started researching. I was like, I have to find out what this is. Found out what the instrument was. Found out where I could go in Germany to learn more about it. So within the first 3 months of hearing that song, I had booked a workshop. I had booked lessons. Like there's a teacher here in Berlin who is the daughter of the luthier Kurt Reichmann. He lives in Frankfurt. She lives in Berlin. Her name's Silke. And so I booked lessons with her and like one-on-one. And before that, I went to a workshop with Simon Wascher, the Austrian hurdy-gurdy player. And I was really lucky because I went to that first. I was the only person there who didn't have a hurdy-gurdy. So this was I'd heard this song, I heard the Eluveitie tune in January, and by April I was at the workshop.
Oh.
So Germany, it's the best place to be for this. So he brought me a loaner for that weekend. It was a French lute back, and it was so beautiful. And I met a woman at the workshop who lived in Berlin who had just bought a Hilsmann and was looking to rent out her old sort of, trad eBay hurdy-gurdy that she'd gotten years ago. It was not the best thing, but it worked. I could do trumpet. It had 2 melody strings, et cetera. So I borrowed that from her for 4 years. Until I was
4 years.
Yeah, she was like, bless that woman's heart. Like we don't have contact anymore because she hasn't really been around, but she allowed me to borrow it from her for 4 years. And in that time I was saving up money and was looking around to think, okay, can I, get one of these myself? You guys are gonna have to stop me at some point because I will just talk forever.
No, it's very interesting. I'm very into the story time moment. So I'm like, tell me more.
Yeah. So when I had this rental hurdy-gurdy, I was playing every day for like 8 hours. And kids, don't do this because I was working from home. I've been working from home since 2009. I'm a freelance translator. So be very careful with your body. Don't do what I did because within the first 3 to 6 months, I developed really bad repetitive stress injury in my left arm, and that has not gone away in 10 years. I still have it. So
that's very important, and we talked about it with Sona on the previous post about the T-Rex hands and everything. This is crazy, and also I have to say myself, I also have my hands pretty up, really. So don't do like with it. Yes, avoid that.
Exactly, and this is the thing. I mean, I had a teacher. I had all the best, foundations that you could have for this because she was teaching me proper posture. She was teaching me, how to but I just overdid it, I think. And I still have not recovered. So everybody be careful. But yeah, so for all that time, I mean, I was playing really intensely for the first couple of months and then I kind of had to slow down. And there were times when I would take breaks of a couple of months to see if I could recover. And anyway, so, but it didn't stop me from being obsessed with the hurdy-gurdy, at all. And even in 10 years, even with all these problems I have, because I have it in my left arm, there's an ulnar nerve entrapment between my elbow and my wrist. And then I also have tendonitis in my thumbs. And that's also from typing because I type all day. So, it's all terrible.
You can't blame it on the hurdy-gurdy then.
No, but part of it is typing. Part of it is the hurdy-gurdy. But anyway.
It's a contributing factor, but
exactly.
There's something else going on there.
Well, it's just my body just doesn't work. That's what it is. So, right. Anyway, so, I do play pretty rarely, but that never really stopped me from being completely tunnel vision about this instrument. It's the only thing I've ever been this obsessed with. So I was still going to all the gigs and, watching all these bands. I think I saw between 2010 and 2020, I think I saw Eluveitie 20 times.
Wow.
Every time they were anywhere near me, I would go. There were times when I traveled. I went to the US to see them once with my brother.
Okay.
He'd never seen them before. And the flight tickets were really cheap. And I was like, Mike, do you want to see this band with me? So yeah, so you do that enough times, and I was in their forum at the time as well, so I got to know a lot of the other hardcore Eluveitie fans and traveled to shows with them and stuff, and it's a whole community and I was the resident hurdy-gurdy obsessive in that group, so you kind of get to know the band members a bit. I remember I went to the Pagan Festival again in Tilburg in the Netherlands in 2012. And we had an Eluveitie forum meetup there. So that, and the band helped us organize it. So we got to go and meet them. And I had a long talk with Anna about like Hurdy Gurdy's in repetitive stress injury because she had the same issues back then as well. And
okay, and how was your meeting with Anna Murphy? Yeah,
it was nice. Yeah, she's really, really cool. Like, she's also one of these sort of tunnel vision people about the instrument. I mean, I think this is something that a lot of Hurdy Gurdy players have in common, that you don't just have sort of an ambivalent relationship with the instrument. It's all you think about, you know.
That's the Gurdy mania, right?
Yeah, Gurdy mania, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I watched the episode with Scott. I understand that feeling. So so we talked a couple times about the instrument, and I picked her brain for advice at the time because I was like, oh, I really want to order one of these. And I talked to Stephan Groth from Zurb and phone about the instrument, and he gave me some recommendations. And Alexis Vacher from France, who now lives in the US.
I love him.
He's an amazing player, and I got to see him again in February when I was in LA and watched him demo some instruments and stuff. He's super amazing player and really, really, really helpful. And that's been the thing that I've seen with this everywhere, is that hurdy-gurdy players are so helpful. Like, if you want to know something about the instrument, they will tell you more than you want to know, as we're seeing right now. So I'm really grateful to all those people. And I did so in 2012 in the summer, I went to France finally, because I was like, okay, this is how you decide what instrument you want to get if you live over here, because it's you have this opportunity to go to a festival where almost all of the hurdy-gurdy makers in Europe have their
continue. Come on,
yeah. It had a different name when I went, but name, but I don't speak French, so I.
Well, you went there when it was still in Saint-Chartier then. In La Châtre then.
In La Châtre, yeah.
La Châtre, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know. It had a really long name, and that was a really long French name. And
I know that name, but so we were talking.
France. Yeah.
Yes, you were in France. Yes.
And I went there 100% expecting that I was going to get a Gotschy like Anna Murphy had at the time. She had a Gotschy Novello Classico, one of those custom ones. It was I just love the sound of that. I still love it. It's not that super mellow cello sound that you get with like a Weichselbaumer or a Hilsmann Largo or one of those, but it's a bit like, it's got a little bit of a goose honk sound to it. You know what I mean? It's more soprano and so I mean, she had some low melody strings on there and everything, but it was still a really powerful sound. So when I went to France, the first place I went was to the Gotschy tent, which is run by Alexandra Betz now. And it was raining. It was raining really hard. It was super humid. All the instruments were playing up. And she only had Phoenixes there. The Phoenix, that's like the standard Gotschy instrument now. And I had asked her if she brought one of those, and she said, oh no, sorry, I didn't. But if you wanted to try one, you'd have to come to my shop. And I'm like, well, I mean, theoretically I could do that, but I tried the Phoenix, and I think it was probably the weather conditions, but I wasn't really keen on it. It just didn't feel right, And you know how that is if you've tried multiple instruments, that you just know when you have one in your hands, you go, yes, this is the one. So that's what I was doing in France, was walking around to these stalls and trying to find that one instrument that sounded the way I wanted and that felt the way that I wanted. So I was a little bit too scared to go to the French makers' stalls because this was France and they were all speaking French, and I felt so awkward. So I headed for the Germans. I talked to Neil Brook there as well, because I think we were talking about this before, that I tried his Hurdy Gurdy back then.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that was a great little instrument. He had a couple of them there, and he was sitting next to Chris Allen's stand that day. And
they sound really full in the videos I've heard. Yeah. Did they have that in person as well?
Yeah. I was so impressed, because I looked at this and went, oh, that's an interesting concept. And then I tried one. I was like, what? Like, I think there's a picture of me going like, having one in my lap and being like,
I would love to try one of them.
So good. So that was, but ultimately the other factor that I was considering while I was doing this is that I wanted a luthier who would theoretically be within driving or train distance, because I thought, I really don't want to fly with a hurdy-gurdy. So I went to Hilsmann's stand and just was like, the second I sat down and tried one of those things, I was like, yep, this is it. I tried the Vivace. I tried the now I'm blanking on the name. Accento. He had the prototype.
The solid body, right?
The electronic one, the electric one, the green one. It was green originally. The one, now it's very elegant and like red and brown and whatever, but it was like electric green back then. And the Largo, which obviously I mean, I absolutely fell in love with that one, but I also had a budget. Like, so, I mean, and this was back before the Largos were really like, you know, double-digit thousands. This was, yeah. So it would have been maybe manageable, but I also wanted to get electronics in the instrument, even though I'm not really a musician. I'm not a professional. But I just thought, just in case, you never know. So I ended up ordering a Vivace with the full electronics, and I have 3 melody strings, 2 trumpets, and 2 drones. And it took about a year to be ready. So I after France, I went and thought about it for a while and thought, yeah, no, this is what I'm going to do. Because he sent me a couple of offers that he said, okay, you can do this one for this much or this one for this much. And I thought, okay, Vivace seems like the best combination of all these things. So I ordered it at the end of 2012. It was ready at the beginning of 2014, but I needed to plan because Sebastian lives about a 9-hour drive from where I am.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's still Germany, but we're at like opposite ends of the country. So, I mean, it's doable. I didn't have to fly, but yeah, so I thought, okay, I really need to plan this. So I got down there in July of 2014 to pick up my instrument, and it's just like, it's so perfect. It sounds exactly the way I want. It does everything I want it to do. It's been so, like, compared to the rental that I had before, it's so stable. Like that was the problem I always had with the old trad. I mean, it wasn't even, I say trad like it's a bad thing. I don't mean that, because this just wasn't a well-made instrument. That was the thing. It was some, I asked my teacher at the time, I asked Silke, I'm like, do you know who made this? Because the lady who owned it didn't know. She bought it off eBay. Don't buy from me.
Watch out, eBay. Watch out.
So she said, yeah, this looks like one of these, 1980s home builds, garage builds. So, but she said, it's fine. It works. Like, she did a few modifications. She took a knife to it and like made some of the notches deeper and stuff.
Well, it got you started. So
yeah, exactly. And I loved it. It was so much fun to play on, even though like the downside of it was for me, and I think this is part of the reason I have this issue with my hand, is that you couldn't play without both melody strings on. Like there was some problem with the balance of the strings. They both had to be on the wheel in order for it to make a sound. So that meant that there was a lot of pressure on my fingers, and that I think aggravated it. Which is why, like, now when people say, "Ooh, should I get like 4 melody strings in my first instrument?" I'm like, no. You're gonna be playing it all the time. Like, you have to be really careful. Like, yeah, I mean, it's if you have one where you have 2 or 3 melody strings and you can take a couple of them off the wheel, and then it's better.
Well, one quick thing about that, though, because at first I thought to myself, well, why would that be the case? And so some people might not know that. It's because when you've got 4, right, and you're playing, even if you're just playing 1, you're still hitting all 4 of them at the same time, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but you'll have even more resistance if they're on the wheel, because you're like pulling against the wheel as well, and that's
Show us, Sergio.
Yeah, I started with with a 4 melody strings instrument, but I almost never used the 4 when I started. Yeah. So I was basically playing on the low G and the octave, like low G, high G, and then eventually with the years of practice, I started using the low D and then the octave. But for example, on my next instrument, I'm waiting for my new Hurdy Gurdy. I only ordered it with 3 melody strings. So because it's normally it's 4. It's normally too much for me. And then you have to adjust an extra line of tangents, make them touch the strings all at the same time, blah blah blah. And then what Ryan was saying, of course, when you press one of the keys, even if you only have one melody string engaged, the 4 tangents are pressing the strings at the same time, right? So it's a bit more difficult to do the vibratos. It's a bit hard, right? Yeah. But it works though. But I also think the 3 melody strings is the best configuration. So
you can do so much of it as well. And I find, I mean, like I said, I don't play that often these days because I do still have this problem with my arm. Maybe once a month if I'm lucky, and then I have to be really careful. Like I have to set a timer, because otherwise I'll sit there and play. I just won't stop. I'll play the whole day, and then the next day I'll be like, ow, I can't move my fingers, you know. But I find I do only really play on the low G melody string. I added I shouldn't say this because Sebastian is very Sebastian Hilsmann is like an engineer, and his instruments are beautifully precise, and everything is like calibrated to the tiniest little
Super German.
Yeah, exactly, and in a good way, obviously a good way. But I asked him the last time I was there if I could swap out I had a high D melody string in the middle, and I asked him if I could swap that out for a low C because I like the sound. He said, no, don't do that. Because he said, I understand why he did, because the key box isn't really wide enough to accommodate it. So when when it vibrates, it'll hit the other tangent.
You get some vibrations on the other tangents and so on, but
I did it anyway.
I did it too.
I had to experiment with it a bit. That I first started with a regular low C string. I was a Tomastic dominant, like a standard. I forget which one it was, but it was really not sounding right. Like it was sounding really weak, and it was sort of floppy. So I think I asked about this in the group, and Christian from Denmark said, try a half scale length or 3/4 scale length string instead for like a smaller violin or viola, to see if that changes it. And he was right. I think I have a half scale length.
Exactly.
Now, and it's
because
much
you have more tension.
Exactly.
So it's less wobble.
And it doesn't, and it sounds louder, and it doesn't vibrate quite as much. So, it's still, I know that when I take it to Sebastian the next time, he's going to go, what have you done? Because the problem is I have an adjustable melody bridge, but the way that works is you have these two wheels on the bottom of the bridge, so you can move one side up and down. And because that C string is in the middle, I had to adjust the melody bridge to accommodate that string. So now I've shimmed my low G, and he's going to have a heart attack when he sees that. You know what I mean? Like a little piece of cardboard in there. Oh. So, but yeah, I'm sure he's, yeah.
Well, from a newbie, why wouldn't you just like switch your strings around so like the lower string would be on the end, or is there a reason for not doing that?
I don't know. I suppose I don't know that it would matter because I have a low G and a low C, so I think I would run into that problem no matter what. Okay. But like, yeah. So I guess I could try, but I'm also really wary about. This is crazy because after 10 years of being obsessed with this instrument and reading everything and doing everything, and I'm still super scared to do anything to my own instrument, which is crazy. But yeah, I usually will do that stuff if I have the assistance of someone a bit more experienced. Like all of these changes that I made, Scott Marshall was here last year, and I was like, so do you think that I could do this with my instrument? And he's like, yep, and just let's do it. Like he just took it apart, put it back together, put some masking tape on my dogs to make them vibrate a little bit differently. Okay. So yeah, it really helps if you have somebody nearby who like is super, super experienced, which I know in the US is a problem unless you live in LA, basically.
Well, but that is guiding us to the Hurdy Gurdy community in Facebook. Like, for example, what happened to you with Christian, that already owned the same instrument as you.
Exactly. He had a Vivace, and this was something that he tried because he had a lot of practice with all kinds of instruments, and with hurdy-gurdies especially, and he didn't have the same fear that I had of just like tearing it apart and doing something new. So, yeah, the group, and I've learned so much from that. Should we talk about how that started? Or?
Wait, before we talk about how that started, we need to listen to some music.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, I completely forgot that we were supposed to be listening to music as well. So what we'll do is we'll listen to two tracks, and we'll put them together. So we'll have one and the other, and then we'll come back in. And the first track we have that you recommended, Sam, was from Mike Smith called Tea in the Morning. Yeah.
So cool.
Mike's own compositions. His YouTube channel is an absolute goldmine if you're looking for hurdy-gurdy tunes. He has so much beautiful stuff on there.
And the second tune, this is the one about the Jack Queen King. Would you tell us?
The band is called Bube Dame König. They're from Halle in Germany. And they use a lot of Irish, Scandinavian traditional tunes. And then they have German lyrics over them. That have been written by a guy that like a sort of poet from their area. And this particular song, I think this was actually written by Jan, the guitarist in the band. And he, it's a story about a local legend in Halle about a forest ranger who lives in their local forest in this cabin, and he just loves it there so much. He loves the forest. He loves his cabin, even though the roof leaks and the door is draft coming through it. And he says, "I'm going to stay here forever." He goes out and hunts his deer or whatever. And as he ages, the city's governing authorities decide, okay, it's time for him to leave this cabin, and he says, I am not leaving this cabin over my dead body. Spoiler alert, sad ending. So.
No, come on.
Oh, the poor Hurdy Gurdy, yeah. So, but it's a really pretty song, and it features Till Ullmann on the Hurdy Gurdy, who is an incredible player here in Germany. He sometimes gives workshops here, and he's done all kinds of. He plays the Weichselbaumer, and he's done some interesting modifications on his to be able to play some chords or whatever. Although I don't think he demonstrates that on this particular song, but it's a really nice Hurdy Gurdy part. So.
Okay.
All right. Let's listen to it.
Yes, let's have a listen to Mike Smith's Tea in the Morning, and then what was the second track again?
The band is called Bube Dame König, and the song is called Heideförster Lied.
Okay, let's have a listen.
das Wild vor mir auf der Hut. Mit Pulver und Blei zog ich durch den Wald. Der Lauf meiner Flinte blieb selten kalt. Doch eines Tages, da fehlte mir Glück. Ein 14-Ender sprang aus dem Gebüsch. Die Flinte ging los, verfehlte ihr Ziel. Der Hirschen kam, kein Schuss, viel zu viel. Und leckt auch das Dach und zieht's durch die Tür. Nichts in der Welt tauscht ich ein dafür. Hier wollte ich leben, hier werde ich alt. In meinem Forsthaus im Döhlauer Wald. So vergehen die Jahre, die Stimme bricht mir. Sie wollen mich holen aus meinem Revier. Mit Pulver und Blei sitz ich an der Tür und weiß nur eins, heute bleibe ich hier. Und leckt auf das Dach und zieht's durch die Tür. Nichts in der Welt tauscht dich ein dafür. Hier wollte ich leben, hier werde ich alt. In meinem Forsthaus im Drehleier Wald. Sie wollen mich holen, sie meinen es gut. Doch ich bin vor ihnen auf der Hut. Die Flinte geht los, die Kugel ins Ziel. Der Förster liegt tot, kein Schuss, viel zu viel. Und leckt auf das Dach und zieht's durch die Tür. Nichts in der Welt tauscht er ein dafür. Hier weiter leben, hier lag er kalt. In seinem Forsthaus im Drehleier Wald. In seinem Forsthaus im Drehleier Wald.
Okay, so we've had to listen to those tracks, and you spoke a good bit about them before we got into it. But what made you pick the Mike Smith track, Tea in the Morning?
I just think Mike is a player who doesn't really get enough recognition. You know, he posts a lot of videos in the group, and he's such a talented player. And the tunes that he composes himself and that he collects from different parts of Europe are just, I think he has really good taste in tunes, you know? And he's also an amazing visual artist. I don't know if you guys have seen his paintings.
The paintings are like, when I first saw one of them, it was like, oh, is that Nigel?
Yeah. I contacted him at some point last year because he did that painting of Nigel Eaton, and I asked him if he was selling prints, and he's like, well, I wasn't, but if you want one, I could do one for you. So I have. I haven't fully moved into this apartment yet. It's the print is still in my old house, but I have like this framed print of that.
It's so cool. I want one too, Mike. Oh, and he also has a very nice collection of Hurdy Gurdys. I would choose the same Gurdies, really.
Yeah, exactly. He has
really.
Just impeccable taste in Gurdies, impeccable taste in tunes, just really all around good stuff.
He should do some paintings of all of the Hurdy Gurdy players. Like, nice painting of Steve Tyler, you know, that would be wonderful. Or
I would love to see that. So yeah,
we can make it on T-shirts. Kids all over the world can have them posted all over their bedrooms. You think that would happen?
Like, you're joking about this, but I actually have like a collection of pictures of Hurdy Gurdys and Hurdy Gurdy players, and like, you know, those old Savoyard, like the women with the Hurdy Gurdys slung over them. I have like, usually in front of my desk, I have all of these things arranged around my monitors. So I can just look at Hurdy Gurdys all day. Yeah.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, I know it sounds strange, but you know, in other traditions, like, for example, when you learn martial arts or something else, you kind of like want to emulate people so that you become like them. So it seems like it'd be wonderful. And you look at them, you practice, then you kind of grow into whatever spirit they're all about.
You're an inspiration.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, the Hurdy Gurdy community. Sergio.
Yeah, let's talk about the community and how we started and what's the goal and everything.
Yeah. Okay. So like you and I didn't start the group. Yeah. That was Jimmy and Sana.
Exactly. Yes, that's true.
They started the group back in 2017 because initially it was a private group where they had there was Hurdy Gurdy player before that, and it turned out that group wasn't really moderated, and there were a couple of members in Hurdy Gurdy player who had expressed a desire to have a moderated space where they could, you know, talk. Yeah. To help
I remember they called me communist for saying that.
Yeah.
Well, they called you a communist for wanting to have more moderation?
Yes, I remember that. It was so fun.
Well, I think because sometimes it was difficult because really there are so many people who were in Hurdy Gurdy player who were just such experts, people who have been playing for years, teaching for years. I mean, Callie and Alden Hackman from the US have been making instruments for years and years. And they were saying, oh, it's been really frustrating because we're getting a lot of resistance when we tell people, this isn't like other instruments, that it's really, really complex and it's difficult to build. And that's why the price tag is so high. And they actually gave up making hurdy-gurdies because it got to be too expensive. Like they were like losing money because the amount of time and effort and everything that they were investing into building these things just didn't pay off in the cost. So they were getting really frustrated with people saying, oh, it's too expensive, it's too expensive. I mean, it is expensive. Yeah. Like this is something, it's a barrier for all of us. And I understand that, but like people have been working for decades and decades and decades to try to change that, and thank God for the nerdy-gurdy now. That's been such a godsend, like to have something that, it may not be like the end all be all of instruments. Maybe you can't record with it or whatever, but it gets you learning. And that's,
exactly.
for a relatively low price
That's
tag.
the purpose. Yes, totally.
But can you really put a price on love?
Right. I mean, you can. It's But yeah, so they expressed this desire. Jimmy and Sana decided that they were going to start this private group where they could talk about what they wanted to do. And ultimately they said, okay, we're going to move this to a public group again, and we're just going to make sure that it's moderated. But at that point they said, well, this is a lot of work for us. We think we'd like to step back. And so they had seen Sergio and me commenting on stuff and said, you guys seem pretty reasonable. Would you like to take it? And so we said, well, okay, So, that was just kind of how it happened. And our whole goal in this was to help people learn that it was, we had this experience ourselves where we'd had people be super helpful to us. And then we just wanted to make sure that the people who were real experts were having their voices heard, and that learners had a chance to ask the questions that they needed to ask without things getting too heated or too complicated, or if that makes sense, I don't know. So that was part of why one of the first things I did was write the FAQ, because I knew that this was a thing where, a lot of what we get in the group, and this is still the case today, is that you get new people coming in and saying, where do I get a hurdy-gurdy? Why does it cost so much? What do I need to know? Where can I learn? So we tried to put together as much documentation as possible about this right from the beginning. And over the years, we've expanded that a little bit or modified it a little bit, but I think we still have a lot of work to do on that, to be honest. We do, yeah. I mean, what I'm hoping for personally is like that maybe we can come up with like a series of videos or something, or like short bursts of things to help people learn without having to read the 20 pages of.
Yes, we're working on that, and we are also working on the new website.
Yeah.
to make the FAQ really available for everybody.
Even that's the other problem.
The group.
I mean, the fact that Facebook is sort of a closed system.
Exactly.
You're not in the group, and if there are people asking about this kind of stuff on Reddit or on other websites where it's like it's good to be able to have public resources to direct them to. And we took the hurdy-gurdy community private a couple of years ago. I think we had it totally public for about a year, but part of the problem back then with Facebook's algorithm was that when people would comment on posts in the group, it would show up in their friends' timelines and stuff. And so, I mean, like the amount of chattering that we were doing in that group, it was like
there was no
hurdy-gurdy friends. So that we took a vote back then and decided that we were going to close the group just so that sort of thing didn't happen. I'm not sure that's really an issue with Facebook's algorithm anymore, but either way, I mean, so that's why we have the restricted membership. That's really the only reason. It wasn't about like keeping people out or anything. But what that actually does help though is that now I add members twice a week, and I can tag them all in a post right when I add them, so they can see, okay, go read this, go read this, go read this, go watch this video, go do this before you make any comments at all. So yeah, that's been kind of a helpful tool. Thanks, Facebook.
And most of the time they listen now that you've got that kind of set up?
No.
Okay.
I say no.
I mean,
I say no. No one reads it.
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe they don't read it right away, but I would say like tagging people has, I think probably 95% of the cases, people don't comment right away.
Yeah, that's very good. That's very good.
It used to be that we would add people to the group, and like before I even had the chance to post anything or say anything or whatever, they'd be like, where do I get a hurdy-gurdy?
Where do you buy? Where do you get one? Yes.
Everybody slow down, take a deep breath. Because the one thing you need with this instrument is patience. You have to be patient. And if you can't wait the time to, if you don't have the patience to read about this kind of stuff or to watch some videos, if you don't have the patience to wait for an instrument to be made, you're probably not going to have the patience to play it, because it can be so frustrating. Even if you have a really good one, there are just days when you have to sit there doing maintenance for an hour before you can play a single note. So yeah, I mean, I hope that doesn't sound rude or anything, but that's how I've always looked at it, that you really kind of have to be tunnel vision obsessive and willing to read a lot before you sort of get going. So
it's like an instrument for smart people.
No.
Totally no.
just an instrument for people who are sort of obsessed, I don't know.
It's actually an instrument for anybody, but you learn that skill of patience, because when I started playing the gurdy, I was not patient. I want everything now, fast, and then my first steps, like taking care of the instrument with the adjustment, with the maintenance, with the cotton, the rosin, the blah, blah, blah. It was like Zen for me, somehow, like with a screwdriver and trying to adjust everything perfectly.
It's like socializing a feral cat. You have to be really patient with it and spoon feed it.
So I mean, it's not an instrument for smart or clever or rich people. Even no. So everybody is
one
welcome.
Way or another, it does require a certain degree of patience. That's really what it is.
Yes, but that's something you can learn.
Yeah,
I did it. So.
Maybe for mature people.
No.
All right, I'll quit with my adjectives. They're not any good.
It's easy for me to say this living in Germany, though. That's the thing, because, like I said, I first learned about the instrument in January of one year, and then by April I was in a workshop, So
that's not mature. That's sort of impulsive.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's impulsive, but I'm just lucky that I had that opportunity, where I understand that in the U.S., that's just not an option for a lot of people. That there's, that you even if you can go to the workshop in Indiana that's once a year, you may not, you might be too far away. The travel might be prohibitive, and that's only the once a year. And sometimes that's not even enough. Maybe you need to get to Europe to test out instruments or something. I mean, and those are opportunities that you just don't have in the U.S. It sucks. Like the vast majority of people in our group are Americans, and I think
is that true?
Yes,
totally. Yeah.
I think something like 80% or something. I mean, not
something
the
like that.
Not the active members necessarily, but
the people that watch my videos, if you watch the statistics, is like 80% Americans.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, I thought the reason they made the North American hurdy-gurdy player page was
that was sort of to siphon off a lot of the questions that people were asking about, like, oh, can I find a hurdy-gurdy player in Iowa? Can I find one in North Dakota? Because it was like, well, yeah, this group, the hurdy-gurdy community, is people from all over the world, whereas North America, it's to try to help people connect within the U.S., Canada, Mexico.
Right.
Yeah, and then we also made the census for that.
Yeah.
So there's the census, and you can put your marker there and watch the map and see if someone is close to you. So
And so what are you two doing, like in regards to the website and how it's going to relate to the Facebook page? Like, how's that all going to tie together with the hurdy-gurdy community website that you both are working on?
Yeah. That's something we are thinking on. It's not 100% decided, but I think the main goal of the new website will be to have articles talking about the most frequently asked questions, and also we want to put the FAQ on different articles. Like each section of the FAQ will be a separate article, so we can raise positions in Google and make people find the information easily. I think that's the main reason we want to make the web page, right?
To have it be a highly visible public resource rather than the group, which is, it's not the first thing you find, where the other issue because I've been for weeks. I mean, I had this had a job to do that was like, you know, my actual job, where I had to stop working on this. But I've been trying to rewrite the FAQ from the Facebook group to take out because we do so much internal linking within the group. Say, oh, read this Facebook post, read that Facebook post, whereas that won't work if we have the FAQ on a public website. So what I have to then do is go through all of these internal links, try to pull out the most important information and put that back into a context that we can use outside of Facebook. So
exactly, it's basically organizing the content, because it's a bit lost. There are lots of very good posts and very good info there, but if you're not very experienced with groups, it can be a little bit messy, right? To find the info, because when you are starting out, you really don't know who is an experienced player or a newbie, and that's something. Really that's a good point, right? Yeah.
I think it would also be helpful for us, I think, hopefully in the future on the website, to have these sort of maybe some articles by experienced players, or even like a link to this podcast would be great, where ultimately you have a collection of conversations with people who have a background, you know. I don't really consider myself part of that, apart from the fact that I'm just, you know, tunnel vision obsessed. But, you know, I don't know, people like these amazing players, people like Nigel or Cliff Stapleton or Steve Tyler, or why am I only naming British people? I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like, there's
Sergio Gonzalez.
Yeah, like with Sergio, or, you know, there's a ton of incredible players in Germany, of course.
Come on, Stefan, Johannes,
There's
Johannes Gevorkian, Juran, Pablo, everyone.
You know, to maybe have some conversations with these people, or articles where they talk about, you know, their background or whatever, or luthiers as well. That
would be cool. We have to make that happen. We'll do that. Yeah.
So, you know, we might have to have I don't know. We might have to have a Spanish version of the podcast at some point.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm thinking about this today, because there are a lot of amazing players in Spain who might not feel comfortable doing this conversation in English.
Well, I messaged Marco Gamarra, and hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. And he said something. He said that he say it again.
Gamarra.
There we go. Okay, I'll get it eventually. But he was mentioning that his English isn't necessarily that great, so he wasn't quite sure.
Okay, but Marco, if you're hearing this, my English is not necessarily great, and I do it. I need you to come here.
It's the challenge. It's been made.
I understand that reluctance. I've lived here for 15 years, and I still would feel really reluctant doing a public podcast in German. My accent, so embarrassing.
Okay, so. I think so. One of your most influences, one of the greatest influence in your playing was metal, right, Sam?
Absolutely, yeah.
So
Eluveitie was the end all be all for me. I think, you know, if it hadn't been for Eluveitie, if it hadn't been specifically for Anna Murphy's style, and for even she did some of the composing in that group as well back when she, you know, was still in it. That I don't think I would be doing anything I'm doing today if it hadn't been for that.
So maybe for those of you guys who are listening this and you also like metal, maybe we can do a little list of metal bands using gurdies. Let's see. Okay, for example, I like the new band by, well, it's not new. It has been around for some years, but how is the name of the new group by Anna Murphy? Cellar Darling. Darling. It's so cool.
She's like those three. It's Anna Murphy, and then Ivo Hensius, the guitarist, and Merlin Sutter is the drummer. They were all in Eluveitie up until 2015, and then they left and started this group. And they are just like, they are such incredible composers. The melodies are like, they go straight into your ear and they stick in your brain and they stay there, and you can't, like, I don't listen to the music that often, because I know if I do, it will be in my head for like over a week and I won't be able to get rid of it. But like, I initially thought, I don't know if this is really my thing, because it's a bit more like progressive rock. You you know,
it's not metal. You're right. Yeah.
No. I mean, it has definitely metal vibes. There's because Ivo was originally like a melodic death metal guitarist, and he had a really good black metal band for a while called Forest of Fog, and then he did and that sort of moved into melodic death as he was in Eluveitie. But then it really reminded me of Muse when I first heard it, Cellar Darling.
Yeah,
I thought, you know, because it's the vocal styles and the sort of progressive riffs that they do, but I thought, I don't know if this is really my thing. But then I went to see them live, and it was just, you know, like Anna is switching between instruments. She's singing, she's playing the flute, she's playing the keyboard, she's playing the hurdy-gurdy, and they're just like the absolute joy and intensity.
The stand, right? She has the accent on a stand, and it was so cool. Yeah. It was interesting.
That's really incredible stuff.
What other bands come to your mind when I say metal and hurdy-gurdy?
Don't put me on the spot here, because all I can think is Eluveitie, and then there are all these other bands that, you know.
Apocalypse Orchestra, for example.
Oh, they're great too. Oh man, that's another one where I saw them live.
Cool. I saw them. I saw them in here in Barcelona last year.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Yeah, they played here. I think it was about 2 years ago at a festival called Frostfeuernächte. It's Frostfire Nights. It's like this tiny little festival out in the forest of Brandenburg. And they were booked for that, and I was so like blessed the sound guy who worked for them, because he really he worked hard to make sure that the hurdy-gurdy sounded good, and it just vibrated the entire room, because they're like doom metal basically, and it's wow. It was so incredible.
Okay.
I mean, because in Germany there's a lot of crossover, like I said, between, you know, metal and this sort of medieval stuff. So you get a lot of those kind of bands, but I feel like, I mean, I enjoy the music, but the hurdy-gurdy really gets lost in there, because you'll have like a hurdy-gurdy and then like 2 or 3 bagpipes on top of it.
Yes, like with Corpus Corax and the Organistrum.
I mean, it's cool, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like there's a real market gap for hurdy-gurdy and black metal.
I need to make that happen, Sam.
Yeah, I remember, you know, Pablo, who plays in Sangre de Mordago.
Yes, he's friends with Grief and all of these
Well, so that's
metal bands.
It's you know, his main project is sort of a dark folk, acoustic, neo-folk thing, and it's stunning. I love Sangre de Mordago.
Sangre de Mordago, yes.
Yeah, he used to play in a band called Antlers, and they were black metal. And the reason I started listening to them is because I knew that Pablo was in the band as a guitarist. But when I bought their first album, I listened to it, and there's like a few seconds of hurdy-gurdy right at the beginning, and I was like, I'm into this. But that was it. There was no more of that in there, and I was like, oh man, there really should be more of this. Like, they were such a good band too. It was too bad they broke up last year, I think so.
So when you're saying there's a gap, you mean that there should be more featuring of the hurdy-gurdy in?
Yeah, I just don't think there are very many black metal bands using it. I know that it sometimes is like an accessory. Like there's a oh no, I'm going to pronounce this really badly. There's a Danish band called, I know what the German translation of the word would be. It's Abscheu, and it's AFSKY in Danish. And that's like Afski, I don't know. It means disgust or revulsion. And they had on their first album a track that was like half hurdy-gurdy or something that was really, really cool. But it was like, you know, where it sort of then blended right into the, you know, that was really, really cool, because it was a bit like Danish folk melody or whatever, and then it just went straight into.
I understand why it's difficult to put hurdy-gurdies in metal, like to do it properly.
Yes,
it's difficult because our instrument is very modal, you know, and metal is very based on chord progressions and chord changes. So for us, it's a bit like difficult to at least to use the instrument as a whole, right? Because, for example, in Eluveitie, they if I'm not mistaken, you are the Eluveitie expert here, but they use it a lot with only chanters, and they do lots of string switches, and eventually we will have Michalina someday here, and we can ask her about. But what do you think about this? Am I right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think they have worked it into the music. There are a lot of, I mean, people always used to, the criticism of Eluveitie back in the day was always, you know, from the traditionalists was that, oh, they're not using the trumpet, or, oh, they're not doing this or that, where it was like, okay, first of all, they do use the trumpet. It's just, you know, it's mixed in a different way in a lot of the tracks where you don't immediately hear it, because it's there with drums, it's there with bass, it's there with, you know, 1,000 other instruments. it gets a little lost. But if you know what you're listening for, it's definitely there. But I think this was also the reason that Anna had, you know, instruments. For the most part, she had instruments that had 4 melody strings, and she had a ton of drones and stuff because and capos, and it gave her the flexibility. This is why, you know, when people say there are so many people who are buying these Siphonas they're like fully tricked out with all the options, you know, and I think that makes sense if you're planning to join a folk metal band. If you have some experience playing the gurdy already, and you want to play with other people who are doing, you know, because a lot of the folk metal bands use Irish music, Celtic music, and you need to be able to have all the flexibility there to change those keys. You need to be able to have the flexibility to do like prog rock kind of stuff. You know, if you're going to be playing in scales or whatever that aren't traditional for the hurdy-gurdy, that aren't, you know, Breton folk, or I don't know. So they use some of that in Eluveitie as well. But if you're not using the traditional keys, then yeah, maybe you do need, you know, 10 strings or 12 strings or whatever. But I don't know. But yeah, with Eluveitie, I think a lot of it, and it's like guitar shredding in a way. What
And
what Michelina, definitely what Michelina does. Like, she has a completely different playing style to Anna. I think she comes more from metalcore, like the sort of where it came out of like mathcore, like it's that really fiddly stuff that, you know, where they're doing all these really progressive technical things on the guitars, but it's a lot of this sort of, you know, up and down the scales arpeggios, but really fast. And that's what she does.
Shredding.
Yeah, absolutely shredding. So you don't necessarily, it's just a different way to use the hurdy-gurdy. You don't necessarily need the drones or trumpet for that, but they do also incorporate them. Although I have to say, with like the latest couple of like since Michelina joined the band, the dynamic of the mixes in the band has shifted a bit. And I don't think that's because she joined, but I think it's because they sort of purposely did a style shift towards more like symphonic Gothic style, because now they have a female singer who's a dedicated female singer, where it used to be that Anna would sing and play the hurdy-gurdy, and now they have a singer as two different people. So they're using the singer a lot. They're using the female singer a lot more, and so it's these sort of symphonic vocals. And the thing that's bothered me about their last 2 albums is that the hurdy-gurdy is so low in the mix that I'm like,
right, yes.
And I've said, like, I told them that after the concert. I was like, you guys, please, the next album, turn it up. Like Michelina does these amazing tutorials on YouTube, on her YouTube channel. She did one on the Nuclear Blast Records channel as well, where she does the playthrough for the song, and there you can actually hear the hurdy-gurdy part. So like, I have to admit that I don't really listen to the latest Eluveitie albums the way I listen to the old ones, but I will go to her channel and just listen to her version, because I just like the song is playing in the background, but then the hurdy-gurdy is emphasized. And that was the thing I always loved about Eluveitie when I first started listening to them, is that their mixes were so clear that you could hear each individual instrument, and one would go up as the others went down. And, you know, there were these beautiful dynamics to it that I think that's a huge thing that's missing in a lot of the rock bands that do use the hurdy-gurdy.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is the studio, and I think, and live mixes as well. So I'm not a sound engineer. I don't know a lot about this, but I can just tell when the hurdy-gurdy is not loud enough.
Never.
Most of the time, exactly.
And what about you, Ryan? Do you like hurdy-gurdies in metal or in rock?
Well, I'm afraid to talk about this. Pretty much I do. However, since I play guitar, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to edit this out after I say it, so you're going to have to tell me. Since I play guitar, and when I hear hurdy-gurdy playing certain things, I think to myself, why don't you just play that on guitar? Because it just sounds like a guitar to me.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people have that.
It's a guitar, but cooler.
Yeah, I know. I get that. I wish I would have started on the hurdy-gurdy. Then I probably would have just been playing it on the hurdy-gurdy. But when I listened to the hurdy-gurdy, like what I always loved about it was this just kind of like overpowering magical experience. And maybe like what you're saying, Sam, if it was mixed when I would hear it, so that it didn't sound like it was just sort of like a secondary factor sometimes. I might be a little bit more into it. But, you know, yeah, I'm sort of on the fence about that. I haven't quite come to terms with it just yet.
I think a lot of people feel that way, especially if they come just from folk music, or, you know, because I mean, it's easy for me to look at it from this perspective, because I didn't really listen to folk before I started playing the hurdy-gurdy, apart from it being in rock bands or metal bands, or, you know, it just wasn't. I don't know. I kind of wish my parents had been hippies or something, because because a lot of people I know who are into this sort of folk grew up with that music because their parents liked it.
Right.
My parents were more into like Motown and soft rock and that kind of stuff, which, you know, is obviously valid, but you're not going to come across, you know.
Well, Hurdy Gurdy.
I might, now that you're saying that, I think I might be a little bit prejudiced because I remembered that Gil Shabanat, his new group, Muddy Gurdy.
Hurdy Gurdy, yeah.
I love that. But he's playing what I would be playing on blues guitar. Mm-hmm. So I think it just might be that I'm not as hardcore. I think that's it. I think I'm a little bit softer. But you know, Sergio already told me that I like. Would you say I like soft, easy listening hurdy-gurdy? So
for me, I think the thing is the order of factors. Like, do you build metal music from the Hurdy Gurdy, or you put the Hurdy Gurdy into metal music?
Right.
So I really want to hear someone like that does it like the first thing I said, like you have your composition on the Hurdy Gurdy and then you put metal on it.
There you go.
That would be so nice.
Yeah. I wonder if that's really possible to do. There must be people out there who can do this. I'm not that person. I wish I could be.
Well, we're not there just yet, but that final track that you wanted to listen to, the Zerp track.
Oh, those
guys. That's not metal. But when I listened to that, I thought that is exactly, in my mind, if I had a kit drummer and a bassist and a guitar player, that's exactly what I would want to hear coming out of a Hurdy Gurdy. So
yes.
Yeah.
Stephan also comes from that medieval background that he came up with, because he actually, before he did Serp, he did a band called, this is a difficult name. The band was called Liederlicher Unfug.
Ooh, yes.
Song nonsense, but in a sort of medieval, like even the phrasing is, the name is medieval.
Okay.
Yeah, it's they did a lot of traditional tunes, but gave them a sort of, I don't know how to describe it. Like the voice that Stephan has in his music is always, there's a sort of a golden thread that goes through it, and it has this energy to it that, you know, it's a sort of cheerful energy where if you've been to a German medieval fair, you also kind of recognize the voice in a way that they have this way of talking to audiences that's very like engaging. Mm-hmm. You know, so he does that a bit with Serp as well, and that's one of the things I really, really enjoy about the band, because it like, whenever I'm sad, I listen to Serp, because it is like, it's like Prozac, you know. Mm-hmm. It levels you right out, cheers you up, because it's just joyful music. And but he also has, you know, coming up in that scene, I think has that background as well, that it's not just folk, but he would have been exposed to all of this, these medieval rock bands that I was talking about as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that rock vibe that's in La Toupie, I think that's where it comes from. And they're always on stage like this when they play that song, like, yeah. Like if you watch, they posted a video, oh God, when was this? It's been a while. I think the tune was called 540 or 540, I don't know. But it's one of the tracks from their upcoming album. And they posted a video for it. It must have been a year or two, because they didn't know when the release was going to be, but they made this professional video for it. And if you watch till the end, they're like, so I think that element is there in the music, that it's an undercurrent. It's because they are really, they are still a sort of trad ball folk band, but they have that energy that's underlying it.
Right.
That's definitely with La Toupie, that's their rock and roll anthem.
Well, do you have any other questions for Sam, or should we just go ahead and listen to that track and see what it's all about?
From this album.
Well, hold on. Let me pin you. Let me get my thing here. All right, pin. There we are. All right, there it is.
So that's, yeah. If you can see on the cover, there's it's a grasshopper or a cricket, and its body is a hurdy-gurdy, because the word chirp is like, that's the noise that a cricket or a grasshopper makes, that chirping noise.
Is this
the name is also nice, Drehvolution.
Drehvolution.
The Drehleier, right? Can you explain that?
The German word for hurdy-gurdy is Drehleier, so it's like a lyre that turns, drehen. And so like the German word for revolution is Revolution, and so they've called it Drehvolution, revolution.
Is this the one that's not released yet, or is this the one that?
No. This is the one that came out in, I think, 2012.
2012. Yeah. Okay. All right.
So the new one is coming out, I think, the end of this year. I don't know. It should be soon.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm really happy that both of you are here, and it was a wonderful conversation for the Hurdy Gurdy Cafe podcast again.
Sorry, I just kind of talk.
Well, I wish, I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking to myself, we should just keep going and just split it into 2 podcasts, but I don't have time, or I would.
No problem for me, man.
It was fun. It was fun.
Forever,
Yeah. Well, again, thank you both for being here. It was wonderful. And let's listen to some Zerp.
Let's do it.